Hi, so I'm going to be showing you how to create an A-line skirt from the skirt block. I've got a quarter scale on the left and a half scale on the right. I'll be working with the half scale as it's a bit easier for me to show you. So the first thing to do is we're going to close the dart at the top. So draw a line from the point of the dart down to the hem of the skirt. Cut up from there and then cut down one side of the dart, doesn't matter which one. Put those together and then just tape it together. So that's the front done, so we can do exactly the same to the back. So we need to put some paper under the part that we've just opened up. So stick that down and then join up the space. So now it's one solid piece again. I'm going to add 1 centimetre all the way around. I'm using a Sharpie here so you can see what I'm doing, but you'd want to use a pencil so it's a finer line and it's more accurate. On a real skirt, we'd add about a 4 centimetre hem so that we could fold and fold again to stitch it up. I'm just going to add 1 centimetre here as it's going to be a small calico toile, and I'm just going to fold it up. I'm going to write fold along that fold line there to remind myself. It's always good to write any instructions that you decide to do along the way on the pattern so you don't forget in the future. So that's the front done. Now on the back again, it's going to be 1 centimetre all the way around. I'm going to add 1 centimetre to the back of it because that's where the zip would go in on this one. If you were making this out of paper, you don't need to add the seam allowance for the hem, so you can just miss that off. On the fabric you've got a weft and a warp. Warp's the lengthwise grain. So the grain line of the front of the skirt is the centre front. So we lay that down along there. And we don't need to use many pins to pin something down. So the top, the middle and the bottom, that's fine, even if this was a larger piece. Just enough to keep it from moving around. And do the same with the back. The grain line for the back is the centre back again, so we're matching the grain line up. But this doesn't need to be on the fold of the fabric because we're going to have two separate parts of this. So again, not loads of pins. So they've both been cut out. And we won't forget our notches, because notches are our friends. So we'll mark the hip line on the centre back as well, because that's where we'd leave it open for the zip to go into. We've got 2 sections for the back and 1 whole section for the front. I'm going to stitch this together by hand, so I'm going to mark my seam allowance onto it so I know where I'm sewing. If you're using machine, you don't need to do that because you can just use the guide plate on the sewing machine. So I'm matching up my notches and the bottom of the skirt and the top of it. And then I'm just going to sew straight along that line. Just using basting stitches here, so they're a little bit bigger than 1 centimetre and it's really quick to do. So I've stitched along all the parts that I need to. I've left it open above the hip line on the centre back and then pressed everything open so that when I turn it through it will sit nice and flat. So now I'm going to make a waistband. So just pin it in place to stop the paper moving around, and I'm going to follow the top of the waistline. So from the centre front, I want to make sure I've got a right angle at the first point, and I'm going up 2 centimetres. So this is half scale, so on a normal skirt that would be 4 centimetres high. Then I'm going all the way, following the curve 2 centimetres all the way along, and making sure I've got a right angle at each point. So again, this is going to be cut on the fold, so I don't need seam allowance on that part. And then a centimetre all the way around again. And I'm going to write centre front so I know which part is which. And then exactly the same for the back. Trace off the waistline, making sure I've got right angles, adding 2 centimetres all the way along. And this was going to have a centimetre all the way along, because with this I'm making a skirt that would have the zip going right up through the centre of the waistband. So centre front's got 2 sections, and the back we've got 4, 2 left, 2 right. I'm just marking my notches so you can see where they are. So I've got one outside waistband, one inside waistband. Pin these together just at the sides and sew up along there. So that's sewn, I've pressed them open with an iron. One of these would have interfacing on. So flip that over, match up to the centre notch, match up your side seams, and match up the end as well. And then stitching all the way along the very top, the part that curves in. So I'm snipping into the curve of the waistband so that we can turn it through nicely. So we're going right up to the stitch line. Sharp scissors help here, sharper than the ones that I've got. And then you'll press the top part of the waistband open so that you can flip it over and you'll have a finished edge of the skirt. So match up the centre front, the side seams and the back onto the skirt, stitch along the top, so I've matched up the centre front and the side seams again. Press that open, then fold it over. The inside of the waistband could be overlooked at this point. And then we just stitch in the ditch. I'll just mark that with a pin for the moment. That all flips in, and there you have an A-line skirt with a waistband. If you didn't want to have a visible waistband and you wanted a facing instead, it's the same method. You're just going to go down this time instead of up. So 2 centimetres down from the centre front. And instead of having right angles, you're just going to follow the top curve of the skirt down 2 centimetres. Mark your 2 centimetres all the way along. So again, no seam allowance on the front, as that's going to be one part that's cut on the fold. centre front, the back's the same again. Going to trace it off the top of the waistband, down 2 centimetres, and again not worrying about right angles at the side this time, we're just following the curve of the skirt. So mark centre back on it so you know which is which, makes it less confusing, and put a centimetre all the way around. So I only need to cut one of this out. This would have interfacing on it. So I've matched that, sewn the sides, and I've marked on the top as I'm going to stitch this on by hand again. So match the centre front notch and the side seams. And match up the back as well. And then it's just a straight line of sewing all the way around the top. And that's the facing all sewn on. So once it's pressed open, you can turn it over. So there's no raw edges along the top. You've got a nice finished line.